I'm Makini Smith. In 2009, while going through a divorce, I decided to jump straight into entrepreneurship. In 2012, I lost my sister and asked myself, what legacy do I want to leave behind? Since then, I've become a serial entrepreneur, helping other women publish their books, produce their podcasts, and reach their big goals to walk in their greatness. I realized the importance of sharing our stories of resilience and how it can be another's guide to walk in a manner worthy of their calling. We are blessed to be a blessing, so get ready to be blessed with an inspiring testimony. Hey, Legacy Leavers. Thank you for joining us on the Walk in My Stilettos podcast, where we have conversations with amazing women that are letting us step into their shoes. I help women to own their voice so they can create impact, prosperity, and legacy. I get inspired when I see another woman succeeding, but what I'm interested more in is her backstory and her mindset on how she got there. So today's guest is about to bless us with her testimony, and since you're already here, you may as well subscribe. Today we have Jess Catorc. She is an award-winning brand strategist that has helped thousands of entrepreneurs and startups expand their reach and revenue online. She's currently the head of partnerships at Teachable in New York City. She's also the host of their annual virtual summits with over 60,000 plus registrants. And over the years, she's interviewed the likes of Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, Mary Forleo, Shetty, my favorite, Lisa Nichols, and more. And as a creative video producer, Jess has developed a unique method using video to outreach and to increase brand awareness. She's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., the Huffington Post, and many, many more platforms. So please welcome to the show, Jess Catorc.
Thank you for having me. Wow, what an intro.
Thank you for agreeing to come on and share your story with us. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I am excited too. I've been listening to your previous episodes and I think you're just such an amazing communicator. You ask amazing questions. So it's an honor to be on the show.
Thank you. And I'm truly humbled by that, seeing how you have interviewed some of my favorite people on the planet. So I am honored by that compliment. I will take it. Thank you.
Of course.
So I love to start the show with icebreaker questions. And I believe, as kids, we have, vivid imaginations of who we want to be before society tries to reprogram us and try to tell us that we need to be realistic and box us into all these confined spaces. So I would love to know, before we discuss how you got to where you are presently, what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Honestly, I think this is going to be a trend with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs now, but I definitely wanted to be an inventor. It was between inventor and performer. Mm-hmm. I grew up, my mom was a professional ballet dancer. She was a national fitness champion. And so I thought on one side I could be a dancer. And then my father was a graphics and web designer. And so I thought, wow, it'd be cool to invent some type of thing. And so I feel like my parents had very unconventional careers for the most part at the time. So there was something there, like inventor, performer, melding them together was definitely kind of on my list.
I love it. Love it. So definitely in the creative space anyways.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. So tell us how you got to where you are presently. Take us along that journey.
So it's a pretty loaded story. And so I'm going to give you the snapshot overview. So we're not here for 10 hours. But building off on, so like I said, my mom was a professional ballet dancer and then was a teacher, and she was my teacher growing up. And all through school, I was training and dancing. I was going to competitions, and I was around 12 years old when I started playing on this virtual pet website called Neopets. Mm-hmm. I don't know if any of the listeners remember that.
I remember it.
It was great because it was just basically a virtual pet website. You could feed your pet, you could play games, but one of the elements of that site was that you could build your pet its own page. And I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was just a game and you learn these little codes that you add in and you can change the colors. But really what you were doing was you were learning how to code websites. You were learning HTML. And that sparked another interest outside of just dance, which was that I loved creating things. I love making websites and videos. And fast forward to, I was 17 years old and I was selected to perform in the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics. I then toured with Princess Cruise Lines for 6 months. And after all of that, I found myself sitting back home at my parents' house. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I feel like I need to go to school. I feel like I need to do something outside of just dance. And so I decided to get a certificate in digital media. Fast forward a lot of the story because it's very long, but I ended up working in different positions where I started to pick up new skills around online business and marketing and design. And when I was 23 years old, I decided that I would launch a business, which then kind of grew and was really the starting point or the pivotal point to allowing me to do what I'm doing now. Because I launched a podcast, had a course, and I then got approached by the CEO of Teachable, who saw one of my video pitches. And I feel like I'm kind of jumping around here, but saw one of my videos, reached out to me, asked me if I wanted to live in New York for a bit. And at the time, Teachable was 15 kids in a WeWork. And I said yes. And fast forward 5 years, and I've been here and went through just an incredible growth of a startup, going through that experience of being acquired and just being so fortunate and having been able to experience all these different things in ways that I would have never even imagined or planned for.
Wow. Okay, so I'm like, where do I go from here?
There's a lot of different.
Yeah, I'm like, where do I want to unpack? Okay, so let's start with when Teachable reached out to you. Where were you living before they asked you to move out to New York?
I was living in London. So I lived abroad. After I got my certificate in digital media, I went to Australia and I lived there for 2 years, then moved to London for 2.5. And just for the backstory, I created a video pitch to reach out to Pat Flynn, who is an entrepreneur and podcaster. And the pitch was to, one, thank him for all of his work, but also to pitch myself to be on his show. And at the time, I had no one knows who I am now, but at the time, people definitely didn't know who I was. And so I was trying to think of a creative way to connect with him. And so I created that video. And so that's how Encore, the CEO of Teachable, saw it and reached out to me. And I will say, I don't know if you resonate with this or if there's anyone listening that resonates with this, but when they offered me the position to work for Teachable, I was very conflicted. The idea of working for another company and not being a solopreneur, not running things all by yourself, but then having to work under and with other people, I was so worried that it meant that I could no longer call myself an entrepreneur or a creator. And I was worried at how would people perceive me? Would people be disappointed that I was doing this? Was this the right decision? But there was a little part of me after I met the team and I saw them and just what they were creating that was this is where you need to be. This is exactly what you have been missing. And so I said yes, and I did it. But it wasn't a no-brainer decision. There was a lot of conflicting thoughts and a lot of pros and cons that I had to figure out.
So what was that? Was there that one thing that made you say, you know what, this is it. I am doing the right thing. This is what I want to do.
There was a few. So I, working from home by myself, a lot of people don't really talk about this, but when you're working for yourself, I always thought that I was an introvert, but I'm actually just an awkward extrovert. I get energy from working with people and around people. And one of the things that I was noticing was working from home, I would wake up in the mornings and feel so unmotivated. Even though I loved what I was doing, it just felt like something was draining me and I didn't know what that was. And I honestly was just very frustrated with myself and critical towards myself that I need to work harder. But as soon as I started being around other people and the collaboration of ideas, that feeling stopped. And so that I think was the biggest thing where it's maybe I need to change how I'm doing things, even though working by yourself works for a lot of people and a lot of people advertise that on social media. You need to know your kind of power zone. You need to know what environment and what situations actually lift you up. And it might not be the same for everyone, but that was the biggest thing that I noticed where I'm like, I think this is something we should pay attention to.
Right. I think it's very important that you speak to the part about awareness, because you being aware of, like you said, you once thought you were an introvert and learned that you're an awkward extrovert. When we are aware of ourselves, when we have taken the time to study who we are and get to know who we are, then we can have a closer look at when something is triggering, what that could be or what is needed. Like even when the pandemic first hit, I know a lot of my friends, because I consider myself a severe introvert. I highly enjoy my alone time. I hide from the outside world as much as possible. So I know a lot of my introverted friends, they were thriving during the pandemic because it was that excuse. They didn't have to go out. They didn't have to network with people. They got to actually focus on being creative and doing the things that they love without feeling like they were being drained. Like, for example, I used to attend networking events and it took me 2 days to recover, energetically after that experience. And then my friends who were extroverts were suffering severely. Those are the ones that when I spoke to, were having, I'm going to say, the hardest time. If I asked how they were doing, they were struggling because they, like you said, you gain energy from connecting with other people and being around other people. And they were feeling so depleted from that they were not able to work as hard as they normally do or feel as motivated as they normally do. But I think you just speaking to that awareness piece, I think a lot of people, they feel like they don't want to box themselves into these labels, but they actually help you to understand what your needs are, whether we're talking about love languages or personality types or, any of those things. It's just being aware of who you are so that you can find the solutions for what you need for yourself or what works for you.
It's so true. And it actually reminds me of Angela Alston. She was actually in our Teachable Summit this round, that she's a counselor, a therapist. And she was saying it's really important to create a baseline for yourself. So really starting to think through if you're currently in a good state or you're having a good day or a good week, starting to think through what is that? What do what are those feelings? How do you behave? What is the environment around you? And just kind of recognizing when you are your best, what does that look like? Because you can then start to also be proactive and start to see okay, I notice I am my best every single time I am by myself in a room, not talking to anyone, just doing deep work. And so if you have a conference that you have to go to, or you have a group meeting or public speaking, you're not getting into those situations and then your body is reacting to the fear, to the overwhelm, but you're okay, I see this is coming up. I can see based on my baseline that this environment may cause me to have a little bit of a wobble, and I can plan accordingly. So when it does arrive, I can be there we are. Yes, I was expecting you. Welcome, dear. Welcome, frustration.
Yeah.
So you take a little bit of that control back.
Yeah. Yeah. And even with the fear piece, actually, I just had a client this morning where we worked through this, where it's, people will look at, oh, well, how do you, overcome fear? How do you get over it? But it's those of us who have learned that the rewards are on the other side of what you feared, it's working through the fear. The fear will always exist. It's your ability to work through the thing and to not allow it to cripple you, or for you to go back to, whatever it was that you were used to before, because our minds are programmed for safety. So, we have something that we're afraid of. Like, for example, when you talked about doing events and stuff like that, years ago, when I first started public speaking, I knew that it wasn't something I wanted to get into. So long story short, I would say yes to things to push myself out of my comfort zone, but then I would have these flare-ups. Like, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, fibromyalgia, and then it causes my body to shut down. And it took friends that are close to me, that were around me, that are every time you have to do a speaking engagement, do you not realize you have a flare-up? Your body shuts down. It triggers your anxiety. You're in bed for sometimes a week at a time. And when we looked at the patterns of every time I had one of the physical shutdowns, it was right before big events. So I stopped saying yes to really big events. And then now, as we are we're, I guess, still technically here in Canada dealing with lockdown, but having to do virtual events, I found my comfort zone through virtual events because I don't have to be around the energy of other people physically to feel drained from the experience. And I'm able to find better coping mechanisms so that when I'm doing virtual speaking events, I'm in the comfort of my own home. Like my anxiety levels are not as high. So the triggers and things that used to shut me down before no longer do that. And I can still do what I love to do. And then still at the same time, make the impact where I'm able to speak, on other events and platforms and conferences.
I'm so glad that you're saying that. I think that, I know you inspire people all the time, but I think it's incredibly encouraging to hear stories like that when people look at you and everything that you're doing, and that you don't have to be a public speaker, even though maybe some of the people you follow or some of the people that you know of in your space are doing that. There's always a way and there's always room for you to recreate how you do it for yourself, and you can still be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I want to get into, I know that you are big on relationship building. So I'd love to hear like how you've been able to build some of the relationships that you've built, even if that's what brought, some of the speaking opportunities for you to connect with people like Jay Shetty and Lisa Nichols and stuff like that. Like, I'd love to hear your journey with that.
Yeah. So I think with relationship building, it started like the things that I was doing. I didn't start it off with like this strategy. It was more so of like, oh, I wonder how I could reach out to someone who probably isn't going to see my email. Or I really appreciate what this person is doing. I don't really even ask right now, but I would love just to kind of acknowledge it. Like there wasn't this like calculated, like this is how I'm going to like build relationships, but it kind of organically grew into seeing that this like certain things that I was doing were incredibly effective as far as just like one, getting people's attention, but building a connection with someone that I don't think there's any way, no matter if you were like the most amazing copywriter, you wouldn't be able to do with an email. So, Lisa Nichols is actually probably a great example of this. When I was 23, I started my podcast, and I wanted to create a podcast, not to build my business, but I just wanted to be able to speak to people that it maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to speak with otherwise. If I emailed Lisa Nichols, she probably wouldn't just hop on the phone for 30 minutes to just like talk to me and answer my questions. So what I realized though is that sometimes people who are bigger have a lot of asks, and there's a lot of people always just like wanting something from them. And so for Lisa, I've been following her work for a while, and she completely changed my life in so many different ways. And so I just sent her a video, and the way that I sent it is she had a conference in Atlanta, and it was at this hotel, and I sent flowers to the hotel, and I was just like, look, Lisa Nichols has a conference here. These are some flowers for her. If you would be able to see her, could you just give them to her? Because I was like, I don't know where she lives. I don't know what her, phone number, and I wouldn't do that anyways. I would not suggest you call people without them expecting your call.
Right.
But flowers I thought was kind of a nice gesture. And if she didn't want to return my, get back to me, there would be no harm. It was just like a nice little gesture. So I delivered the flowers to the hotel, and I had a card that said, Lisa, thank you so much for everything that you do. I made you this short video, and I put the link in the card, and I put the flowers, and they delivered it to her. And in this video, I basically just recorded a little voiceover, had some kind of B-roll video that I had recorded. And I just thanked her for the work that she did, but I also shared specifically what it was about her work or specific messages that she shared that impacted my life. And then at the end, I said, look, the reason why I wanted to reach out is I would love to be able to interview you on my podcast. Either way, though, just know I can't say how grateful I am for everything that you've done. No need to respond either way. I wish you all the best. And that was the video that really started to change the trajectory of so many things that happened in my life, because Lisa not only said yes to the video, but it ended up touching her in a way that I hadn't even imagined. She said, she's like, I saw this video and you looked like one of my nieces. I'm like, I can't say no to this girl. But it was just she went like above and beyond. And from there, she ended up being one of the references for my O1 visa to get into the States. We've built this relationship. She invited me to her birthday. And like, it's blossomed into something that I couldn't have anticipated, simply because I went a little bit out of my comfort zone. I acknowledged the work that she was doing. And I mean, to Lisa's credit, she's also just an incredibly wonderful human being who like appreciated that and got back to me. But I've used videos for so many different types of outreach, but I think it doesn't have to be video. I think just acknowledging the work that people do can go a very long way.
Right. Honestly, like even when you just shared that story with Lisa Nichols, like my heart was like tingling inside, because I'm a huge fan of Lisa. And I remember back in, I'm going to say around 2013, 2014, when I just got into like coaching and speaking, I remember doing some digging and I was looking for Black women that were in the thought leader space. And back in 2009, a friend of mine had forced me to watch the documentary The Secret. And it was like, at the time that I watched it, my mind wasn't fully absorbing it. I was going through a divorce. I was just getting, into entrepreneurship. My headspace wasn't fully there and ready for that information. So when I started doing my research, after my first book came out, and I was like, is Lisa Nichols the only Black woman in this space right now? And she was the motivation for a lot of the things that I was doing. Like I studied how she spoke on stage. I studied how she shared her story. I signed up for her newsletter. I tried to volunteer to serve at one of her events. And then a few years ago, I think it was 2018 or 19, I can't remember. I was going through a breakup. Like in the next week, I was scheduled to be at the Archangel Summit here in Toronto. And Lisa Nichols was one of the main speakers. And I got there and I was like, I just finished wiping my tears in the car, and I get inside and I wanted to sit at the back of the room. I wanted to be at the event to open up my I'm going to say my headspace that I was in, but I wasn't interested in interacting with anyone. And I go to sit at the back of the room, and I turned over to my left, and Lisa Nichols was sitting there with her team, like at the back row of the event. And because I was already in shambles from what I was dealing with, I was like, okay, well, you're just going to sit here and stare at her. Like, so I said, I don't want to interrupt. She's probably just trying to prep and get her energy before the event starts. And slowly people started to approach her when they realized that she was sitting at the back of the room. I think there was maybe like 3 people from her team. And then a couple people started to slowly go over to her. And I was like, I don't want to ever be that girl. And I said, I don't want to ask for a picture. I don't want to get on her nerves. I just want to tell her that I love her. And I waited till everyone else, walked away and they were about to dim the lights for the event to start. And I just walked over quickly and I said to her, honestly, I love everything that you're doing. You have completely changed my life. I've been following you for so long and I just want to say thank you. And she held my hand and she looked me in the eyes and she's like, your eyes are so beautiful. And I was like, oh, she spoke to me. But that was my moment. I think of every time I, have to do speaking engagements and things like that. And I look at her story of how she's transformed her life, not just in the physical sense, even how she's changed physically, but I'm just like, she's impacted so many lives. I don't even know if she realizes.
It's mind blowing. And I think though, that story is an example of for anyone, but just how it's not the big things that you do. Cause when you think of Lisa Nichols or anyone, it's not just the video or the course or the program you took or whatever. It's that one small moment where they acknowledged you as a human being, where they looked you in the eyes and were like, I see you. And we don't have to be huge influencers to do that. But you just never know how impactful that can be. And for her, she probably didn't even realize, looking you in the eyes and holding your hand and just speaking truth would resonate and would be something that you would remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you've used unconventional ways to, reach out to people and connect with people. I would love to know, sometimes people think about not wanting to approach people that are on the level of, Lisa Nichols and Jay Shetty and stuff like that. What do you think are some barriers that are keeping people or holding them back from doing that?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think there's a few, and I also am going to add a micro step in between that, which I think is both great and also can help ease those nerves. But I think what holds people back is they're approaching it like an ask. Like they're approaching it as if I need this grand person to do me a favor. And when you go in with that type of energy, whether it's an ask or it's a date or it's a friendship or it's a boss, that energy is received in a way that doesn't feel like this is an opportunity. This feels like I'm either going to feel bad to say no, or if I say yes, I don't really know like what this is going to be, or, I think that it's so important that you go in when you're going in for a pitch or an ask that you think, one, I don't need a yes. I really don't. And my intention is to either say, like you said to Lisa, or to create a video of gratitude, of appreciation, of acknowledging what someone has done. And I think it's even like more helpful, especially when you do a video, to not just say like, you're amazing, you're great, but really take the time to think through very specifically, what did they do? Was there a specific episode of, I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of pitches from people that listen to this, but was there a specific episode in your podcast? Was it a certain thing that you said in an interview? And what did that thing lead to? What was the pivotal moment when that happened for you? And I think when you share that with someone, it all of a sudden opens up they can really see that the impact that they've had. Not just you've been amazing, but holy crap, this was a very specific thing that this person was able to do because of me.
Right.
So I think that that's important to go in with that mindset. The other thing though, is you don't need to always reach out to the biggest fish. I was listening to a Clubhouse interview or a Clubhouse talk a while ago, and it's actually Scooter Braun was in the room, and everyone was asking him like, hey, like, how do I basically become the next Bieber, Ariana? And, how do I connect with you? And all these different questions. And regardless of what your opinion is of Scooter Braun, he said something that I thought was very powerful, which was that when he started, he's like, everyone is thinking of reaching up. How do I connect with someone above me? How do I connect with someone bigger than me that I can really get something from? And he was saying that when he was starting, all of his connections, all of his networking was done horizontally. He was looking at people in his space in different industries that were kind of at the same level, ambition, drive, and vision. One of those people ended up being the founders of Spotify. And he's like, you don't just build your network by punching up. He's like, look at the people that are already around you and see how you can make those genuine relationships and connections there and grow together. And I just thought that was such a great piece of advice. And it's something that everyone can do.
Even as you said his name, I was like, that name sounds so familiar. He was on Jay Shetty's podcast recently.
Oh, amazing.
And I listened to that episode, and I guess he had this, I'm going to say, a spiritual experience where he went away to a spiritual retreat, and there was like no phones, no connection with your family, no nothing. And it's totally, I guess, shifted how he functions going forward, where people are like, what is wrong with you? Are you okay? But it's almost like he had this spiritual awakening. And there were so many points within even just that episode that stuck out to me. So he said in the episode, because, people are always looking out to, like you said, they want to reach like the highest person, or they want, they're doing things for ego and recognition. And he said, we're made to serve, not to be worshipped.
Ooh.
Because people are always looking for recognition, and they want people to know their name. And that line in particular stuck out to me. And I don't want to go like a whole side tangent on him, but what you were saying about even when you're reaching out to people, it shouldn't be about what they can do for you or what you can get from them. One thing that's always worked for me is reaching out to people and just being of value to them, seeing how I can help make their dreams a possibility, or how I can contribute through my area of genius to make them get closer to whatever their goal is. So when he said that about, we were made to serve and not to be worshipped, that really stuck out to me.
I love that. I'm definitely be listening to that episode. I didn't know he did interviews other than music related stuff. So that's great.
Yeah. I mean, Jay Shetty's been getting people to come out of their box with a lot of things. And I have a huge crush on Jay. Don't tell his wife. Okay. So I would love to know, I know for a lot of people, the pandemic changed how they serve and how they do things within their business or their industry. So I would love if you can share, how has things been for you since the pandemic? Has it changed how you served, or how has it affected how you serve?
So yes, it has definitely changed how I serve, but it also has changed how I work. It was actually, it's great. I've never actually talked about this publicly. We'll do it now. So kind of like going back when I said that when I was working from home, the thing that I kind of was struggling with was motivation, and working around other people really changed that. And that was great. But I started to notice that there was especially just kind of being by myself and working remote and being older too, I started to notice there's just like a lot of struggle. There's a lot of challenges in my work, in just doing certain things. And I was talking with one of my family friends who works in medical, and she basically said, she's like, have you been tested for ADD? And I was like, no, I'm not hyperactive. I don't, she's like, no, like this symptoms and the things that you're sharing that you're struggling with are actually common symptoms of ADD. She's like, I'm not a doctor. You should go get, assessed, but it's a very common thing to be or undiagnosed, especially with women, because the symptoms show up differently.
Right.
And I kind of was like, I don't know. And so I started Googling it, and I went to a doctor, and I got like professionally assessed by a psychologist. And it turns out that I do in fact have it. And it was one of those moments where honestly, I was just like bawling when I realized that, because I'd gone through my entire life dealing with certain things that I assumed either everyone dealt with. Things were always hard for people. They always kind of had to like drum up this motivation, and they were always kind of doing things at the last minute and struggling with procrastination. And like all of these, I mean, that's only part of it. And to finally realize that there actually was a reason for that, and there are things that you can do to work on that and to address that, was just like this moment of, I'm not stupid. There's a reason why this is happening. And that is honestly the biggest thing that happened during this pandemic, was this realization of, like, if anyone is listening and you are struggling with anything, to not just resort to this self-blame, this like
negative self-talk,
the comparing yourself. Because also the thing is, you might experience one symptom that everyone has, but when it's 6 or 7, and it doesn't have to be ADD, it could be anything. It's always helpful to speak to a professional just to see what's going on. Your life will get so much easier when you have the tools, when you have, going back to, we were saying about being an introvert and kind of knowing what your plan will be if you have to go to a conference. When you have ADD, or you have any type of, thing that you're dealing with, knowing what the landscape is and having a map so you can be proactive and anticipate certain things that are really going to be a struggle for you, or you're going to are going to be a challenge, it is going to change so much. So, honestly, that was the biggest thing for me. And
thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I know there will be so many women that will definitely find comfort in even hearing that. Like, there's another content creator. Her name is, I think, Isis Brianna, and she openly talks about having ADD, and she's like amazing at what she does, like creating courses and stuff. Like, I obsess over all of her stuff on Instagram. And I use her as an example to show to my daughter, actually, because one of my daughters was diagnosed with ADD when she was like, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade. But how do I say this? People may label you or misunderstand, but you guys are actually like genius. When you guys are able to, like, anything that you're really interested in, you hyper focus on and you excel at. Yes. Like, I look at my daughter's qualities on, she may not be the greatest in doing schoolwork, but if it's something that she's interested in, watching her like excel at that and like kill it because of her hyper focus on that, like, there's just no stopping you guys. So thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes people feel like because they can't focus on one particular thing, or they feel scattered, or they feel like, they don't know why they're, not motivated to do something. Like you said, the procrastination, things like that. But once you know what you're dealing with, there's so many things in place to help you so that you can thrive and be like beyond your best self.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's more common than I think a lot of people realize. But it was just like not knowing, like going your entire adult life and then being like, oh, there's actually like, I could have addressed this like your daughter in grade 5. Are you kidding me? But, it's either way. And I think like for whether it's, whatever it is that people are dealing with, the challenges or the struggles that you have, even though you don't feel like you've come out to the other side, what you are doing is you are building these incredible muscles. And, for me specifically, it's like I've built this endurance of like, it feels like you're climbing up a mountain because I want to get certain things done. It's just like very, very difficult sometimes. And not to overlook the like in between mess, that you're in right now. Cause you're like, when you're at the gym and you can hardly do, 10 squats, it's not like it hurts, but it's not like it's not doing anything. You're building those muscles. They don't go away. Right. So it gets better. It gets better.
It does get better. And like for me, as I guess having to learn that through my daughter's experience and me being able to study up on it and see, I'm going to guess like how to best support someone with ADD. It's helped me even with my mindset coaching clients, because I have a client right now who was diagnosed with ADD recently as well. And learning, like, I think for me, what it taught me, if anything, is that everyone learns differently. Right. So one person may be able to sit in front of their laptop and, thrive, and not everybody can do that. There's some people that need visual stimulation. There's people that need hands-on stuff. There's people that if you can just find a way for them to enjoy the activity or whatever it is, then they'll learn. Like if it's boring, like your brain completely shuts down and it's like, yeah, no, thanks. Like, so I get it. So before we go to the final segment of the show, I want you to tell people where they can stay connected with you online.
Oh, I would say the best place is Instagram. I'm at Jess Catorc. I don't really use Twitter that much, or Facebook, or YouTube too. Just Jess Catorc. Yeah, no, this has just been amazing, and I appreciate being on here.
Awesome. Thank you. I will definitely have the direct links for them to connect with you in the detailed section so they don't have to search too far. And for the final segment of the show, I call it a walk in her wisdom. It's kind of like a rapid fire. And you can choose to answer one word, one sentence. Sometimes I break my own rules because I want you to unpack, but all right. Are you ready?
Ready.
If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why?
You are enough. Because I think we often, and I'm sure everyone says this, but you are enough. And I think that we doubt our potential. We doubt our value. And we use external factors, external experiences, and opinions of other people to determine our own worth. So you always have, you always will be enough no matter what happens in your life.
Love it. When and where are you the happiest?
Oh, I would say this is a weird one. Either movie theater by myself, or like visiting like a museum or like a show by myself. I don't know why, but experiencing like theater or culture and just being by myself and like my thoughts and experience is just like really nice. So maybe I'm an introvert in those cases.
Maybe you're an ambivert.
Maybe. As I'm saying this, I'm like,
Okay. Name a book that has changed or greatly impacted your life.
Oh, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Okay. What new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life in the last 5 years?
New behavior, I would say, and this isn't really one word. Of course, Jess is going to go on a ramble, but the behavior is the switching, being direct and clear and communicating your needs is not a sign of aggression. It is not a sign of being overly assertive. It's a sign of respecting the other person. That pivot in mindset of I'm being respectful by speaking clearly, by saying what is on my mind.
Communicating.
Yeah, that's been a huge one for me.
Love it. Okay. Name one of the most worthwhile investments that you've ever made. And that could be of time, money, energy.
I would say, one of the most worthwhile. There's like a few. I would say for like personally, it was like a program, like a live cohort program that I did with On Deck. But personally, I think it was a ticket that I booked to Paris, which is where I was born, to go to a wedding and to see my family because I, lost family members and stuff. And looking back, that was, I'm so glad that I did it.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. What have you become better at saying no to in the last 5 years? That could be distractions, invitations, people.
I've gotten better at saying no to my anxious thoughts. I tend to have a very wild imagination on like the worst case scenario. And I've gotten very good to recognize when I'm being a little bit overly dramatic in my head and being able to be like, stop, we're good. This is a little bit too much. But honestly, it's made a big difference.
I love that you share that because I can completely relate. I was actually the same client that I was talking to this morning. I was just explaining to her because I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder back in 2006, but I was explaining to her how I've been able to work through my anxious thoughts because, I'll think of like sometimes the most impossible thing that could happen. And it's now like, okay, seriously, McKinney, like, is that really going to happen? Like all of the things that you've stressed about your entire life, has any of them ever actually happened? Like, so being able to say no to that.
That tone just works so wonderfully for me. Like that, like really, it's like are you really, that's what we think is going to happen. Yeah. You good?
Yeah. It's like, that's what we're doing now, McKinney. Okay. I get it. Okay. Last but not least, what do you wish women would do more of?
I wish women would give themselves a chance at giving themselves a chance. I feel like we often focus on like, just go for it. Just do it. Just do that thing. But I personally feel like there's another little hurdle before that, which is I need to give myself space and allow myself the opportunity to give myself the opportunity to take that chance. Like just allowing yourself to think like, you can do this. You can think about doing this, which I think holds a lot of people back.
I love that. I love that. Wow. Thank you, Jess, so much for sharing all of your gems with us, for being so open and transparent. I truly, truly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me on here. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And to all of you legacy leavers out there, until next time, make sure that you subscribe, rate the show, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And I just want to thank every single one of you that has been listening, because thanks to you, the show currently ranks in the top 1.5% most popular shows out of all podcasts globally. So I just want to thank you for tuning in and listening. And if you can think of, I'm going to challenge you to 3 people that would receive value from hearing Jess' story today, please share it with them. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode. You can tag us on Instagram. You can tag Jess at Jess Catorc. You can tag myself at The Real McKinney Smith, and continue to walk in greatness in your stilettos in a manner worthy of your calling.